Very warm welcome to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 10th of April, and in the coming days and weeks, we are going to start to look more and more at the prospects for summer 2024, and we'll get right into it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. There was the Global Weather and Climate Report back on Sunday of last week, an epic 33-minute video talking about the world's weather for the previous 7 days, and lots going on, including the very sharp decrease in temperature over the far eastern Pacific. Looking at that, and this upcoming Sunday, the all-important live stream will be back at the time of 4:30, between 4:30 and possibly just after. I do have an engagement earlier in the Sunday afternoon to attend. So I'm very hopeful that 4:30 will be the time for the live stream. The 88th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report will be looking at all things global weather, and I hope you can join me for that. So yeah, looking more and more at the prospects for the upcoming summer season, you could look at all the analogues under the sun, but the equation has now changed. Given how warm the overall planet is, whether it be the oceans, the land areas, or the atmosphere, that has to get taken into consideration. And all the previous barometers that we have used in the past for long-range forecasting, in my opinion anyway, certainly goes out the window. We can still look at things like soil moisture content, the overall sea surface temperature profile, the type of atmosphere that we've got. The Mann-Julian oscillation gets taken into consideration as well. A very complex overall circumstance which goes into making a seasonal forecast. Now, last summer was about as close to a spot-on forecast as I probably will ever get. Probably the best summer forecast I've produced to date, and the first summer forecast was issued back in 2010. So the upcoming summer forecast, there is a lot riding on it, given how good the overall summer forecast was last year, with a very warm, dry June. In fact, it was the hottest June on record, and then it was followed by a very wet July and fairly wet August, and that wet theme has really maintained itself right the way through till now. The question is, with all the water in the ground, with the type of atmosphere we've got, with the likely final stratospheric warming that is expected according to the ECMWF to occur sometime around the end of week 1, beginning of week 2 of May, what influence will that have on the upper air pattern as we go later in May and on into the early portions of June? I will certainly try my best to give you my opinion of what I think may happen as we go forward. So this is the ECMWF mean zonal winds at 10 HPA, the upper levels of the stratosphere, and it has certainly been a very turbulent time within the polar stratosphere. There has been warming influence quite often, quite an often attack of warming taking place, especially from Siberia, from Asia towards the pole, and that has displaced the vortex quite often, weakened the mean zonal winds, and by doing so, it has allowed a frequent south displaced jet. That has then been forcing a lot of our weather up from a southwesterly direction, a warm source, a wet source, and therefore we have seen consequentially a very wet autumn and past winter. The big question is going to be, do we continue with this wet theme, or do we finally start to break the wet rut that we're in? So like I say, the final stratospheric warming is expected to take place as we go towards what that would be somewhere in the region of about kind of the 5th through about what the 14th of May. The mean zonal winds are expected to reverse for a final time. What does that suggest? Well, it could potentially suggest more in the way of blocking to the north, low pressure force to the south, jet stream force to the south, and obviously we're continuing to weaken the strength of the jet as we continue to progress towards the warm season here. But I wanted to also say to you that we are going to look at the Copernicus suite of long range models in tomorrow's video. So we're going to look, I said in yesterday's video that would either be today or tomorrow, that we're going to look at the long range models with regards to the prospects of not only May, but June, July, and August in terms of the upper air pattern, rainfall distribution, and the temperature anomaly here. I think, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I would be swaying towards warmer than average firmly right away, given the overall situation that we've seen in recent months and even the last few years as well. There has definitely been a tendency for warming. There's no denying that, and there's no getting away from that. The question is, how warm are we going to get? Are we going to get chopping and changing? Are we going to get a 2018 type summer where we had a terrific June and July, then a bit of a mixture during the month of August? Do we get a back and forth? Do we get an extreme summer where we get like 2019, where we had exceptional heat at the very end of July? It's either the beginning of July or the end of July. I think it was the end of July, wasn't it? But we had a very mixed type of summer. Kind of leaning towards the mixed side at the moment, but I'll talk more about that in the coming days. This is an interesting tweet here by the BBC, and it shows the rainfall anomaly specifically for Edinburgh. It has been a very, very wet April so far, and this maintains the theme that we've seen for quite some time. South displaced jet, warmer than average, subtropical and tropical Atlantic. So when you've got our storm track down over that warm, anomalously warm waters of the Atlantic here, and you pick up more moisture within the atmosphere, there's also more to it than just that. But we have seen an exceptional wet April. So the warm, wet forecast that I had for April is playing out quite nicely so far. Parts of eastern Scotland, northwest England, Wales, southwest England have had close to their normal April rainfall through the first 10 days of the month. Is that a surprise? No, it is not. It certainly is not. In Edinburgh, it's been double the average monthly rainfall. Very, very significant amounts of rainfall has fallen in the Edinburgh area. Eastern Scotland, southeastern Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, parts of Wales, and further south, it has been very, very wet and miserable. But Edinburgh has seen double the rainfall it typically would expect to see for the entire month of April. The average only being 46 millimetres. They've seen nearly 100 millimetres of rain fallen. So very, very significant and impressive stuff. Now, this is going to be talked about within the Global Weather and Climate Report with regards to the record-breaking levels of moisture content within the atmosphere. And this is for the month of March here, looking at the wetter than average versus drier than average through the column, through the atmospheric column. You notice here that we've got a lot more moisture, interestingly, over Greenland here. With warmer than average temperatures, that tends to release more moisture within the atmosphere above the Greenland ice cap, eastern North America, Alaska. But more importantly for us, we've had drier than average conditions within the atmosphere over the central North Atlantic here. But with the south displaced jet, we've had warmer than average sea surface temperatures, and we've had consequently wetter than average atmospheric content here through the tropics, subtropics, up through the Canaries, and then up through Iberia, France, UK, and Ireland here as well. I personally think this is a byproduct also, not only of El Nino. Definitely El Nino's having an impact. Also, the global sea surface temperatures being warmer, especially in the Atlantic, that releases more moisture into the atmosphere above as well. But also the Tonga volcanic eruption back 2 years ago in January. I definitely think naturally with the tremendous release of moisture from the Pacific into the global atmosphere, that too is also having an impact. We'll talk about that somewhat in the global weather live stream this upcoming Sunday. Also wanted to show you this very interesting tweet here by Millows Millick, and I always hope that's the right pronunciation, by the way. But this is actually the essentially the drought monitor for Europe. We've got one for North America, Canada, and the United States, but this is a very interesting one here for Europe. And it looks, I think this is Copernicus that produced this. But you can see here that the majority of the UK is in the neutral zone, which means no drought with no deficit either way. But what's interesting is we do actually have a slight deficit over parts of the Central Highlands, southwestern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and also up the western side of Scotland. Given how much rainfall the UK has seen, remember that a lot of the times when you look at the rainfall anomaly from the Met Office for March all the way back through July, there has been a slight deficit of rainfall up the western side of Scotland, which I think is really quite interesting, given how much rainfall there's been elsewhere, eastern Scotland, and pretty much right across England, Wales, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. It has been exceptionally wet, but even parts of Northern Ireland, interestingly enough, there's a couple of those little orange dots which represent soil moisture deficit and a rainfall deficit. Now, the heart of Europe is actually not looking too bad. We've still got that drought up the eastern side of Iberia, as you can see here. France is looking really good, but it's been super wet, obviously. The bulk of Spain and Portugal is actually looking pretty good. Central Europe's looking pretty decent. It's this area really around the Mediterranean basin that would be of concern. Southeastern Europe as well. This is the photographs that he's taken from Serbia, from around the Belgrade area, showing the cracks in the ground and what appears to be a very, very dry looking landscape within the Balkan region of Europe here. Is this where the heat wants to go as we progress towards the summer season? That's going to be the question. Super wet conditions over the UK, Ireland, and even western fringes of Europe. Increasingly warm conditions. We've seen month after month, monthly records falling, for example, France, Spain, Portugal, central areas of Europe, Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe. Month after month, we've seen record breaking warm conditions, but we've had very wet conditions focused across the UK and Ireland. In terms of extreme heat, we've not really seen that so much here in the UK. It's been more in the way of rainfall. Milder than average, yes, but not the extreme that we've seen over Europe. Interesting conditions over the global sea surface temperatures here. This is the annual difference. And again, this is something more for the global weather report, but I wanted to show you this nonetheless. This is the change in the global sea surface temperatures over the past 12 months. Look at how warm the Mediterranean is. So do we have, with dry conditions over southern and eastern Europe, combined with a warmer than average Mediterranean basin, that could mean where we promote the strongest high pressure and the strongest heat anomalies compared to average. Central and Eastern Europe may be the concern area. The western side of Europe here, the UK, with wetter ground, even across France, sometimes in years gone by, that has tended to lead to cooler than average temperatures or average conditions, a restriction, so to speak, in the heating potential from the sun. A lot of energy goes into the ground, then that brings up that moisture into the atmosphere. Some of that energy from the sun goes into evaporation as opposed to heat in the atmosphere, for example. But then the equations have changed. We've got warmer than average sea surface temperatures. That may help boost high pressure across Western Europe as well. These are the things that I'm looking at. These are the important things that I'm looking at with regards to the overall summer forecast. Look at the difference over the North Pacific. Warming along the west coast of North America, as you can see here. Strong warming, central and western portions of the equatorial Pacific. Sharp cooling now over the eastern portions of both the equatorial portion of the Pacific and the southeast Pacific. The South Pacific generally, really from the coast of Chile, Peru, all the way across to Australia, we've got this belt of cool with warm over the top. That has influence on the atmosphere as well, obviously. The Atlantic cooling against the African coast, Cape Verde, but we've got warming central tropical Atlantic towards the Caribbean as well. We've got cooling over the Gulf of Mexico and off the east coast of North America. We've also got cooling across quite a large area of the North Atlantic, if you notice here as well, compared to 12 months ago, which is also rather interesting. So yeah, very, very interesting times to come. Now, MJO, it looks as if it's actually trying to rotate into the null phase and then back out into what would be promotional of blocking. Now remember what I showed you, the final stratospheric warming. This could enhance blocking over the North Atlantic, Greenland and the Arctic region here. Now we are expecting to see a strong positive Arctic oscillation in the next several days to week or so, and then it's expected to go back negative once again. And it may be somewhat to do with this null phase of the MJO rotating back towards phase 1, which does promote high latitude blocking in combination, by the way, of this final stratospheric warming. But then the stratospheric warming doesn't take place really until May, so we could probably discount that actually. But then what I'm wanting to show you here is how we start to change the upper air pattern as we progress from mid to late April. So you notice here, this is the initial, this is Friday the 12th of April, so the upcoming Friday. We've got a lot of low pressure extending from the subtropical Atlantic all the way up into the Arctic region here. And within the Arctic, you can see here there's a lot of blues representing a positive Arctic oscillation. Notice all the positives here extending from the between the Azores and the Canaries all the way up through the heart of Western and Central Europe here, promoting very warm compared to average temperatures. As we play through this loop, you notice that we start to see a change taking place. We actually start to see higher pressure replace lower pressure over Europe. So we're starting to see the high that's centered over Iberia, France, Central Europe at the moment shift westwards towards the Atlantic here. And by doing so, that's then going to force a trough into Central Europe, and we're going to see quite a significant drop in temperature over the heart of Europe. Record breaking end to March, record breaking beginning to April for central areas of Europe, Central and Eastern Europe here. But the models are really suggesting that we see a trough, replace that heat with something below average as we progress towards the middle portions of the month, and also a northwesterly flow for the UK. Drier, I think, is going to be the theme, hopefully, for the UK. But as we continue to play through this loop, you can see here that we start to see the buildup of pressure over the North Atlantic and up towards Greenland. So we're reversing the pattern from positive to negative Arctic oscillation and North Atlantic oscillation, and this takes us towards the final 10 days or so of April here. What does that suggest? What does that mean? Likely, it means a drier than average theme towards the mid and late month. Now, the month of May looks like this in terms of the upper air pattern. A lot of blocking to the North Atlantic, Greenland, over the Arctic region. You can see here, this is a negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation pattern for May. Notice here we've got a weak negative here, well out to the west here. But that could be a dry, quiet month if that was to materialize. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the month of May, according to CFSV2, is actually looking drier than average for the majority of the UK and Ireland here. Could it be some sort of a byproduct of this final strat warming? Maybe, I don't know. The timing probably, the timing of this is probably not right, but you can see kind of generally what I'm talking about here. But certainly it looks as if it's an interesting overall situation going forward. Finally, let's have a quick look actually at the CFSV2 weeklies, if I can do that, and look at the rainfall anomaly. This is the upcoming 7 days, by the way. Very dry compared to average France, Spain, Portugal. High pressure dominating here, low pressure further north here. So we've got the wettest conditions across the northern UK, drier across the south. This is the upcoming 7 days, obviously. Then we see the reversal to drier than average and a build-up of pressure to the north and to the west here. Then as we progress towards the final week, 24th of April through the 1st of May, looks as if the UK is drier than average. So overall, I think the ideas have played out quite well. Warmer and wetter than average overall, but a drying trend mid to late April. So we'll wait and see what happens. look at the long range models with regards to the summer in tomorrow's video. So stay tuned for that. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me know that you're enjoying the content by hitting the like button, and also leave a comment in the below the video. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.